Hey, Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. Tell us who you are and what you do.
So Jim Heininger in Chicago. I run two different firms, actually. The first is Dixon James, which is a strategic communication and change management firm. Started about 15 years ago. And then more recently, we've done something really interesting in creating a niche firm that focuses just on rebranding organizations called the Rebranding Experts, so that we get some good SEO lift, and have developed a really end-to-end process for helping organizations through that whole rebranding journey.
Cool. And are you an accidental agency owner, or how'd you get into this?
I am an agency brat. I actually grew up in the agency environment. But the first 28, 25 years of my career in the public relations agency environment, so working for Bushman Hillard, Ketchum, Porter Novelli, Ogilvy, then went to McDonald's Corporation as kind of a hired strategic communications guy, so to speak, to help them through some issues that they were facing, where I learned a lot about just the internal perspective on agencies and how to get the best relationship and work out of your agency, and also kind of double down on this whole branding and change management kind of expertise. So when I finished the work on those projects, they actually said, we want you to keep doing work. We want you to be available. So we'll give you 2 years worth of work. Go start your own agency. And that's where I originally launched Dixon James. And then we gained the experience in rebranding over the years too.
Very cool. If you think about a lot of the agency owners listening right now, we're accidental. And, like we knew how to do something cool. Someone offered us money. We put together a crappy logo really quick. We slapped a couple colors together. We started kind of building a brand just by accident. And then you kind of look a couple years later or many years later and you're like, man, should I rebrand? Should I not? When is the right time, or what would you say to these agency owners listening of going how do we make sure we have the right brand that we've put out there? I guess that's the real question.
Interesting question. And I'll start out by saying, as we monitor companies that are rebranding almost on a daily basis, news feeds in to see who's announcing rebrandings, the business category that rebrands the most is agencies,
of course.
And I think it's because they clearly understand, if my brand's not working well for me, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to move on this. I'm not going to sit back and let it be a drag. And that word of being a drag, I think probably the most important thing to realize is, if it's not working hard for you, if it's not helping to differentiate you in the market, if it's not making it clear what kind of customer you want, what kind of work that you do, step back and evaluate whether that's the time to rebrand. And if there's a way that you can name and reposition yourself and do a lot of that heavy lifting for you, then's the time to go for it. And you've got a pretty controlled group of stakeholders in the agency business that it's easier to share the story with them, to update them on the why you're doing it, and to get their buy-in to where you're going in the future. So that don't ever let that be anything that would hold you back. If anything, let the competition run trying to keep up with you.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time too, a lot of agencies, they're doing it for a couple of years and then they go, I'm going to niche down. And I'm like, well, that's kind of the time to kind of rebrand. And they're like, well, but it's going to hurt my existing clients or the people that already know me. And I always tell them, I'm like, they're probably not paying attention to you like you think they are. But they're not going to your website every week. They're probably not going to your website every month. So they're probably not going to even know until, it's many years later.
Until you tell them. And what's interesting is when we started to focus on that niche of rebranding about 7 years ago, we decided to spin off and create a separate agency. Then we could pour 100% of the marketing of that agency into that rebranding story and really try to develop stronger thought leadership around it. It was getting kind of hard to do that in our original agency. And so rather than making it a team or division, which we tried to do for a while, I said, let's spin it off and let's get some better SEO first of all, for people that are looking for a rebranding capability. Because one of the things we learned in the process is that most rebrandings, when an organization decides they're going to do this, when a business is going to rebrand, it's usually kind of C-suite discussions. It's nothing that they're talking about broadly within the company. It's something that they've kind of determined they need to do from a business strategy. And then they either turn to their existing agency and say, do they have the capabilities to do what we need to get done? Or do we need to go find an expert in this area, somebody who specializes in this, that has a deeper understanding of the whole process? And that's where we get our incoming leads from, is when they start Googling, I need a rebranding expert or a rebranding specialist.
I think it was 3 years ago over the Christmas break where I was at my mother-in-law's, and the name of the company was always Jason Swank. I mean, you go to jasonswank.com and, Jason Swank Mastermind, all this kind of stuff. And I was just sitting there. It's like, no, I was like, I don't want it branded me, because it's just positioning me rather than all these amazing, smart agency owners in the mastermind, because we built an amazing community. It's not Jason Swank. And so I was just like, what do we do? It's like, you want agencies to master what they're doing. So that's when I didn't even talk to my team. I kind of felt bad. I did literally I bought the domain name. I redid the whole website, changed everything. And when they came back from Christmas break, I was like, hey guys, we're agency mastery now. My team's like, are we changing everything?
Yeah. When you're a solopreneur starting out, you got to leverage your name, your reputation, your experience set. But when it grows beyond that, that's when you see people say, they call themselves the Heininger Group or the, Heininger and Associates. Well, that gives you a little of a stretch, little elasticity there. But then at some point, it's more, what's the value that you bring to your customers, to your clients, and how do you rename the organization to be able to deliver that value?
Well, and do you really think a name matters? And I'm gonna ask you this, because there's lots of big companies that their name wasn't even a word, like Google. Now it's more of termed as like a verb, right? Like, do names really matter?
To us, they do. To us, it's an opportunity to put something compelling out in front in your market that it's going to capture attention, differentiate you, do some of that work for you before you have to, the phone or have that first meeting. And it's getting harder to name organizations. That's one of the biggest challenges, is because virtually everything's taken at this point in time, which is why it's making up a lot of words. And then those you kind of look at and you say, what does this mean? And how is this relevant? And that's what I think brings in the question of, does a name really have importance? Because you see companies that are creating names that are so far out there, you really got to stretch to understand what it is that they do.
But doesn't it come down to, like, if you think of a name, it's more about, I think, what I find more important to me personally is more the elevator pitch, right?
But the pitch should build off of a name if they want to work in its fullest, sense.
Yeah. I actually agree with you. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, because obviously I picked agency mastery, right? That should tell you I agree with you. But I always like to try to argue too.
There's nothing better than an elevator pitch that starts from a single creative kind of concept. So anytime we're rebranding an organization, we try to find that name that's packed with meaning that they get really, really excited about, and then inspires them to want to tell you the elevator pitch, because it all comes together as one.
One of the most stressful things about running an agency is proposal. It feels like controlled chaos, right? You rush to get them out the door with complete accuracy, just hoping you don't miss something crucial. One wrong move could lead to costly mistakes or possibly not landing the deal at all. That's why I'm excited about Smart Pricing Table. It's an award-winning proposal software built just for marketing agencies. Now, it's designed to handle your unique challenges and cut down the time you spend on proposal as much as 90%. With Smart Pricing Table, you're going to turn your crazy process into a smooth, predictable system that works for you, not against you. Oh, and by the way, the creator is a former agency owner and a past mastermind member, so you know Smart Pricing Table is built with the right strategies behind it. Say goodbye to the proposal stress and hello to confidence. Go to smartpricingtable.com/smartagency to see if this is the missing piece your agency is looking for. Plus, just for the listeners, schedule a demo and get half off for the first 2 months. Check out smartpricingtable.com/smartagency.
We had this event that we do every year. It's called Elevate My Agency. We branded it that way rather than, the Jason Swank workshop, or whenever you can kind of put what people want in the name. But then it's also going to sometimes hurt you. Like if you ever try to go broader, when you start a business, you start kind of broad because you don't know what the hell we're actually doing, right? And then you figure out all the shit you don't like. And then then you narrow down to the one little thing you really do like. And then you get really good at that. And then once you get really good at that and you max out that market, then you want to kind of start expanding a little bit. And it's kind of funny, like when you start thinking of like the brand or the name, it's like the very beginning, it starts off broad and then it narrows and then it's broad. And then it's like, it's just like, I can never win.
Naming's a tough business.
You got any strategies for rebranding and naming that you've figured out over the years?
So we developed as part of the methodology, a whole component or piece of it, which is the whole naming thing. And there's a lot of work you got to do in advance of that to really be able to then be in a position to word or look at word options best exemplify, the purpose of your brand. And that's really getting leadership involved in understanding what are their key differentiators, what's their promise to their customers, what's the legacy they want to leave, what do they own nobody else does, and then putting that through a funnel to come out with the kind of clear brand promise that you're going to stand for, and then what's a word that represents that and that brings that to life. And then you have to decide what kind of word do you want. So do you want a descriptive word, which are pretty overused at this point in time? Are you going to coin your own term? Are you going to borrow the meaning of another word, but have it apply in your industry? You can't try to do all those at once. You got to pick one or two that you're going to really focus your creative energies on, or you'll burn yourself out quickly, and as well as the budget. So getting them to decide what kind of word it is that they want, then focusing on the creative option here. It's a lot of putting things out on the table. What do you like? What do you don't like? And then zeroing in on those things that they like and continuing to remind them that that's the journey you've been coming down, so that you end up with a couple different options that you're going to go out and do a trademark review or approval on and decide which one you're actually going to move forward with. Because oftentimes trademark approval can take up to a year. So if you're trademarking your name, it's going to take a year, and you got to be in pretty confident shape that it's going to get approved, and that your trademark attorney loves it and says 99% chance it's going to get approved, so that you can start down the road of the whole implementation piece, and know that you're not going to suddenly find out it's not.
Trademarks are a pain, and you got to even once you get your trademark, what I've learned is if you get your trademark, it's about when you started using your trademark. So if you were able to, let's say this happened. So we have a couple trademarks. We have agency playbook. We have agency mastery. Let's say someone used the term agency mastery 5 years ago, just very lightly in an article. And we just got the trademark. I can't stop them from using that because they started before me. But if anything after I started using it, I can stop it. But this is only as good as you're willing to fight it too. On trademarks, people think, oh, I got this trademark. I trademark best darn whatever, and no one can use it. I'm like, well, yeah, legally no one can use it, but how how often do you want to go after people for this? And I mean, we've stopped people, using the agency playbook or agency mastery that are going after our same audience, which pretty easy to do. It's like, come on, like you don't want to go down this road. But I'm curious, what does brand mean to you?
So it is the total collection of experiences and properties, assets that one sees that defines what a company is. So it's all that what people put in the traditional bucket of the logo and the visual identity and so forth. But more importantly, it's what's the experience? What's the promise that you're making to your customers? And do you deliver on that? Is that evident in everything that you do? That to us is a much richer meaning, and therefore something that you can define that will really work harder for you in the market.
Well, do you think you really can control a brand though? Isn't it more of how people recognize what you stand for?
It is in the customer's mind, how they perceive you, but you can influence how they perceive you. And that's what branding is all about, is trying to influence the way people perceive you and your products and attaching value to it, especially over a competitor.
Yeah, because I always look at, Steve Jobs he always focused on brand. And he always admired, I think, Nike. I had one of my old teammates at the first agency. He used to run all of Apple.com. He used to work for Steve. And he said he would just obsess over Nike. Look, this is a shoe company. It's a commodity.
Different industry.
But you understand what they stand for. And if you see the little swoosh, what do you think? Just do it. Or like, Seth Godin always talks about, if Nike created a hotel, you would probably pretty much know, like, what is this hotel going to be like? Or Apple create a hotel experience. But if like Marriott created a shoe, you wouldn't have a clue. Like we'd be lost. You just wouldn't understand it. But I do like how you say you can influence it.
That's what marketing tries to do.
Yeah. But it's all about, how do people relate and what's the experiences that you want them to think of? Like, is it good or bad or, whatever it is. And I think a lot of agencies really kind of take their eye off the ball on that. And they just let other people kind of dictate their brand versus try to influence. And so like for everyone listening, I want you guys to think about if someone was going, and this was an exercise I told someone to do, like if someone was going to introduce you for this huge stage, how would you want them to introduce you and write it out? And it's kind of funny, like when we create our own little press kit, right? Whenever I go on podcasts or speaking stages, and they always ask like the same question. So I was like, I'll just put this press kit together, this page you can go to. And we wrote, I was like, I want to, this was like 10 years ago. I was like, I want to be known as the most sought out speaker for whatever it is. I just write it out, right? I influenced it. And so that's how everybody introduces me now. And it's kind of, and like now, I wrote it like 10 years ago. I'm like, kind of creased me out a little bit when I came the words. Yeah, like I kind of wrote that, but I influenced it.
We tend to focus on what it is we do as opposed to the outcome we deliver.
Yeah.
And there's a million firms that do the exact same thing that you do, or anybody's firm does. How do you work to create a different outcome for your clients? That's what they want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, awesome. Well, Jim, thanks so much for, coming on the show and sharing with us. If you guys like this episode, make sure you share it out. And if you want to be around other amazing agency owners on a consistent basis, reach out to us and talk to us about, your agency, and we'll let you know if we think the mastermind's right for you, or if we can help you out, or we'll point you to a resource that can help you out. Just make sure you go to agencymastery.io. And until next time, have a swank day.